Now it is.
Oh,
Welcome to Sweet Apple Massacre. I'm Vinyl, and he's...
Shadowblade.
And this is going to be fucked up.
I'm a porn star.
This is not professional voice acting. We will suck ass.
I'm a teacher. I'm not paid to ask questions.
That makes no sense.
I don't give a shit. Yeah, it's gonna be shitty voice acting, but you know what? It's just for fun.
What's
Strange, demented fun.
Okay, let's do this.
Ready?
The story. Big Macintosh surveyed the many apple trees that made up Sweet Apple Acres. It was nearly applebug season once again, and it looked as though they would be having a bumper harvest this year. He nodded, satisfied. His sister Applejack walked up beside him. "Oh boy, howdy! I'm sure glad you ain't injured this time, Big Macintosh," she said. "Why, there's even more apples in them trees than last year."
Yup. You're shouting really loud.
Sorry.
Big Macintosh replied in his characteristic manner. Them's a lot of apples.
Applejack went silent for a moment, enjoying the feel of the slight breeze against her blonde mane. "Say, I don't suppose you've seen Apple Bloom anywhere, have you? I've been looking for her all day, and she ain't nowhere to be found."
Big Mac shook his head. Sorry, sis. Can't say I have.
"Darn, that filly's probably gone off somewhere with friends. I just hope she ain't getting herself in any mischief, or else there'll be hay to pay." Dirt.
Don't you worry yourself, Applejack, he replied. I'm sure she's perfectly fine. But anyway, I need to go back to the barn. I gotta go and press some apples for some of my home brew apple cider. I hoof picked a few apples earlier, especially all nice and plump and ripe, and they ain't gonna press themselves.
Applejack laughed. "You sure do love your cider, don't you? Just make sure Apple Bloom don't get her hooves on it again. We all know what happened last time."
Mm-hmm. Big Macintosh chuckled along with his sister. Yup.
Okay, move up the screen.
Yeah, I'm a little dyslexic, so words mix up, bro.
It's alright. Don't worry about it. If they don't like it, they can love it. The large red pony trotted back to the barn and gently closed the door. This is going to get terrible before it gets better.
I have a bad feeling about this, as Obi-Wan would say.
He opened a trap door with his mouth and went down into the steps into an old disused apple cellar. Usually it was just filled with junk, scrap metal, old worn-out plows, dead bodies, old rope, and other various bits.
No, there's no dead bodies.
Outlets usefulness. Big Macintosh often came down here when he wanted to get away from the world, to withdraw for a little while and have some peace and quiet while he masturbates.
Hey, it's not in there.
I just added it.
But they can...
I don't care. Today it was different, however. The old rope, at least, had found a new use. Because in the cellar space were Apple Bloom and her fellow cutie mark crusader, Sweetie Belle, and Apple Scootaloo. Dang it. Bound and gagged and propped up against the wall. 3 pairs of scared, round eyes looked up at Big Macintosh as he approached.
Now then, all you 3 fillies, he said, and as placid as ever. Y'all need to learn a lesson. You need to learn not to mess around with Big Macintosh. All I want is some peace and quiet, he said, looking directly at Apple Bloom. The little red-haired filly cowered under his gaze. All I want is a quiet life without all you cutie marcus running around the place making with noise. Doesn't make any sense.
Making with the noise.
Oh, making with the noise. When I'm finished with y'all, there's gonna be no noise from you ever again.
As Big Macintosh approached, Scootaloo flapped her wings, struggling to get off the ground. Big Macintosh laughed, grabbed one of her wings, and twisted. At first slow, watching the pain visibly grow in her eyes. But then tore hard, smiling slightly when he heard the snap and the muffled whimper that came from Scootaloo. I'm not being loud. Chill out. He then threw her to the ground.
Your wings are useless, you silly little filly, he said with pleasantly.
He then went to the toolbox and took out a rusty knife with a jagged blade and dropped it in front of the 3 fillies.
I'm going to take off those gags now, he said. The first one of you to scream gets their tongue cut off.
He took off Sweetie Belle's gag first. She looked at him with terror, but managed to stay quiet. Next was Scootaloo. Why am I doing this voice? She let out a strangled whine and was breathing heavily, still in horrendous pain from her broken wing, but managed to resist the temptation. Finally, he removed the gag from his sister Applebloom. She stared at him with her large round eyes filled with fear and incomprehension. This was Big Macintosh, after all, her big brother, and the gentlest of souls, wasn't he? Surely this was just some horrible joke. But she had seen what he'd done to Scootaloo's wig, and it was definitely not a joke.
April Fools.
She took a deep breath. Applejack!
Big Macintosh shoved his hoof in Applebloom's mouth, silencing her screams. He sighed and shook his head. I told you not to scream, Applebloom. You should listen to your big brother.
I'll scream and scream again, and Applejack will hear it, Applejack said falteringly.
You know, I kind of hope you do. After all, I still ain't... Well, where the fuck are we? I still ain't forgiven Applejack for that injury she gave me last apple bucking season. If you want Applejack to join y'all down here, scream away. I, for one, will welcome her company. But now, to business.
Big Macintosh picked up the knife and loomed over the cowering Applebloom. He pinned her down with a powerful hoof and stuck the knife in Applebloom's mouth. Sweetie Belle vomited at the sight, the thick yellow chunks of acidic-smelling liquid spattering heavily on the floor. Oh, God. Scootaloo managed not to be sick, but rather gasped, sobbed, and choked with panic. Lovely sound effects, sir. Big Macintosh forced open Applebloom's mouth and with some effort cut out her tongue. Applebloom tried to scream, but her mouth was too full of blood, so it was more of a muted gurgle. After a short while, she collapsed, tears streaming down her eyes, falling unconscious from the shock and pain. Big Macintosh then took the tongue, rolled it in a puddle of putrid vomit on the floor. He smiled at Scootaloo.
You hungry?
Scootaloo shook her head and vigorously cast him a defiant glare.
If Rambldash was here, she would kick the crap out of you, you
maniac.
Maniac! Big Macintosh shrugged. Well, she ain't here. And anyways, I wouldn't be so sure about that. Rambldash ain't as tough as she likes to make out. He shoved the vomit-covered tongue into Scootaloo's mouth and used his hoof to clamp her mouth shut. Don't you...
Go try.
Don't you go trying to spit it out now, he said calmly. With a little laugh, Philly struggled and squirmed. Didn't your mother ever tell you how important it is to chew your food? She doesn't have a mother!
Lovely. Scootaloo closed her eyes and flapped her one good wing desperately, eventually swallowing Applebloom's tongue. Ew. Big Macintosh, still holding the writhing... Oh, God. Scootaloo down with his strong hooves, then mounted the orange filly and slid his penis into a tight virgin pussy, raping her for several minutes as Sweetie Belle watched. Trembling with revulsion, Applebloom was still out cold, blood pouring from a torn-up mouth.
Can you Mercure rape victims? Big Macintosh said with a tender mockery as he fucked Scootaloo, followed by a gentle chuckle. Guess you all found your purpose and laugh now. You special talents getting raped. Yep.
This is terrible, terrible, terrible.
I don't know why, but I think it was Civil War.
Anyway, eventually he withdrew from Scootaloo and gripped her head tight, repeatedly punched her hard with a hoof in the face, causing her nose to shatter and spurt with blood. He scooped up some of the blood and some of Sweetie Belle's vomit with his tongue and held it in his mouth, so that it mixed with his saliva, and then brought his mouth close to Scootaloo's and spat the rank mixture into her mouth. He clamped his hoof over to her mouth and held her nose until she gagged and eventually had no choice but to swallow. A lady always swallows. As Scootaloo retched and spat and cried, he turned to Sweetie Belle. He grabbed her easily. Oh, God.
Oh, gosh.
I know where this is going. As she was too shocked and traumatized to respond, and with apparent amusement, he rammed her horn up Scootaloo's ass.
Randy and I do this all the time!
Oh, God. The horn was too big and hard, so the skin around Scootaloo's ass ripped, and blood and fecal matter first trickled and then poured profusely down onto Sweetie Belle's
What's with
face.
these people in the poo-poo and the pee-pee and the...
This is a disturbing fic.
You keep doing that, Sweetie Belle, he said. The unicorn carried on, pushing her horn up to Scootaloo's anus, slowly but surely. Her normally well-groomed pink and purple mane was now stained reddish-brown. glistening with the
Wetness.
of the
Piss.
piss and blood. If ya stop, I'll come over there and get creative. I may seem a bit dense, but I'm actually quite a creative stallion, you know. Big Macintosh said and winked. Yep.
He went over to Apple Bloom and penetrated his little sister's unconscious body with his hard cock.
Why?
Oh my god.
You, is this West
I
Virginia?
hope this is almost over. Well, he violated her, and another knife, this one sharp and shiny, it sliced open her flank, causing her glistening intestines to flop out wetly onto the floor. He glanced over and pleased to see that Sweetie Belle was still using her horn to anally penetrate Scootle. And her face was now completely covered in blood, feces, and urine. He turned his attention back to Apple Bloom and scooped up her crimson entrails and wrapped them around her neck, still fucking the little filly. And with his front hooves, he pulled and pulled until it was wrapped so tightly around Apple Bloom's neck that it broke her windpipe. She was now surely dead, but Meg Macintosh continued fucking her furiously until her body began to lose form and collapse into a quivering, amorphous mass of fur, blood, and flesh. Oh god. The perineum had fallen away, leaving a single red and gaping void. He carried on until he was fucking nothing but a single swollen and bloody orifice. He then discarded his baby sister's carcass as though she were nothing more than a rotten apple core. He then took a knife and grabbed Sweetie Belle and tossed her aside and forced himself into Scootaloo's ruined anus. And he then took the knife and cut from her ass in a sweeping motion up to her belly, and her innards fell out. He then grabbed her head, twisted, and tore it clean out, using his immense strength, and fucked it in the mouth and then tossed it aside. He then had sex with her headless body, both the vagina and the ass, until he got bored. Sweetie Belle was the last remaining Trudy Mark Crusader. She herself was barely conscious.
The last stand.
Overcome with nauseous stints of blood, shit, and piss that covered her horn and her face.
You sound like an Asian man.
I am Asian. But Macintosh pinned down Sweetie Belle. Down, what the fuck?
Stupid Mongolians.
Stupid Mongolians.
Stay
Oh, it's
away
my
from
wall. But Macintosh pinned down Sweetie Belle down with his... What the fuck? Pinned Sweetie Belle down with his hoof and plunged a knife into her green eye. And twisted, causing vitreous fluid to dribble out onto her handle.
What's vitreous?
It's...
Anal
vitreous.
blood?
No,
Okay.
it's in her eye.
Okay.
You ever heard
Oh,
of
I get it.
vitreous?
I get it.
Where was I?
Vitreous fluid.
Out onto the handle. After that, Sweetie Belle let out a throaty whine and involuntarily emptied her bowels. And the aroma of fresh urine and feces filled the apple salad once again. He opened the knife and did the same with the other eye. What the fuck? He withdrew the knife. Damn it. Each time holding her tight and sticking his hoof into her mouth to silence her agonized screams. He licked the vitreous fluid that had leaked onto the knife, and then methodically began cutting and hacking at her front and left hoof using the rusty knife. The knife was quite blunt, so it took Herculean effort to get through the skin, bone, and cartilage, but eventually the bone splintered and the leg came off. He did the same with her other legs, until all four were amputated and nothing remained but bloody stumps, with slimy white ligament and broken bone shards hanging out. At some point, Sweetie Belle had passed out. The overwhelming pain, too much for her to bear.
I think she would already bled out by now.
Same here. He then used the knife to gouge out her left eye and jammed his penis in her eye socket, penetrating repeatedly deep into her brain, enjoying how tight her skull felt around his hard shaft, and how warm and squishy the brain matter felt against the tip of his throbbing penis. You know, it's just an everyday occurrence, right?
Yeah, she'd be dead by now.
Of course she is.
You know what? Like a skull has several bones.
Yeah.
And like in the eye socket.
Yeah.
Wouldn't those have cut his penis?
Probably. As he did, he twisted Sweetie Belle's neck. After he had finished skull-fucking her, he cracked open her skull with a swift stamp of the hoof, bit down and ate some of the exposed brain, taking care to spit out a few fragments of skull bone that got mixed in as he chewed. It was warm and slimy and tough, and stuck to the back of his throat. He swallowed, because that's what was in his mind, and then raped Sweetie Belle in the ass until it tore open, and his engorged penis was smeared with that little fecal matter that remained in her rectum. I just sounded like a Chinese man. He took one of Sweetie Belle's detached legs and shoved it inside her ass, and then fucked Apple Bloom and Scootaloo's bodies in the same way, forcing the amputated limb in, hoof first, as far as it go. He thought how strange it was that still lumps of torn flesh that he was fucking with Sweetie Belle's leg had once been so vibrant and alive such a short time ago. But now all three were dead, of course, and he finally finished by spurting his voluminous load into Sweetie Belle's Apple Bloom's destroyed ass backside. I'm sorry. I'm disturbed. He watched with satisfaction as the semen, blood, and shit mixed together, forming a foamy maroon pool. Oh, God. He bit down and greedily lapped up some with his tongue,
why would you?
pressing his tongue deep into her anal cavity as not to miss any, letting some dribble down his chin. It tasted foul, of course, a rancid, tangy slime that burned his throat, but it felt so satisfying. He swallowed the filthy goo and wiped his mouth with a hoof. It was done. Big Macintosh would finally get his peace and quiet. Big Macintosh, you down here? It was Applejack. He looked at the discouraged.
That's a scary picture.
He looked at the disfigured corpses of the three fillies, all now barely recognizable as the oh so sweet Curly Mark Crusaders, and realized that he felt strangely unsatisfied. It had all been a bit too quick and easy. Now Applejack, that would be a challenge.
Oh, gosh.
She was Ponyville's best athlete, after all. She even had the prize pony of Ponyville trophy to prove it. And, of course, he still hadn't forgiven her for that injury. He felt his penis stiffen once again in anticipation. Hey, Big Mac, I said, are you down there? Came Applejack's lilting voice again. That's weird. This time more insistent.
Big Macintosh replied sternly.
Serenely.
I sure am, sis. Hey, come down here a minute. I got something to show you.
Sure thing. What is it?
It's a surprise.
Oh, boy, I sure do love surprises. Something real nice, I'll bet.
Something real nice. Big Macintosh looked at the mangled, mutilated remains of the Key Mark Crusaders, and his lips curled with a smile. Yep.
And there's the picture.
Ugh. Oh, God.
Yikes. That was disturbing. I can't believe we just read that. That was...
What the fuck did you click?
17 minutes of her life we'll never get back. Alright, that was Sweet Up Massacre. See ya.